You're gonna love this video.
Alrighty, ready, I'll take you out. I kiss your whiskers, your tail so hot. Alrighty.
Hey guys, this is your fiery friend the Infernoman here, and if you're into games, you're right where you need to be. But before we get into it, if you like the content that I put out there, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit me up with a like, or even better, subscribe to me. It really shows that people do care about my content. Now, if you have questions, comments, stuff you'd like to see played or discussed, you can @ me on Twitter or chat directly with me as I stream 2 to 3 times a week on Twitch. A visual link for those are up on the screen right now, and I will have direct links in the details below. And for today's deck tech, we're going to be going over rats. I saw this janky tribe for a little bit now, and I've been trying to figure out the best way to build this. Originally, I did say I wanted to make this a Rakdos color, in other words, black and red, but the red was not working out, and it was just easier to go with all black. So that's why we're going to be doing mono black rats. If you don't know how I do this, the main way I pretty much go over the deck techs is we'll talk about the creatures first, then we'll talk about the non-creature spells. We'll go over, of course, the land base. Afterwards, we'll go over our sideboard briefly, have a match with Sparky to show you exactly what the deck is trying to do. And of course, in this case, since we are over budget, we'll actually go over a possible budget rats deck if you really want to play this, but you don't want to spend any wildcards on it. But with that, let's go ahead, let's begin. So to begin, here's our creatures, 22 of them. Most of them are not going to be anything spectacular, but when you do utilize them correctly, your payoffs will be that much more stronger with them. To begin, Typhoid Rats, a 1/1 for 1 mana. It's got Death Touch. We literally have it in the deck because it has Death Touch. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been using it, period. Burglar Rat, same thing. It's not anything special. By forcing our opponent to discard a card, sometimes that is helpful in a situation. It really sometimes might be more beneficial to give them that card into the yard. It just depends on your matchup. But still, it has some utility, so that's why we do have copies of it. Rat Colony, we actually have 6 in the deck. Remember that Rat Colony doesn't limit you on how many copies you can have, so this is what we're mostly filling out the rest of our creatures with. It does get stronger for every rat we control, so every time we can put into play either a Burglar Rat, Typhoid Rat, Pack Rat, the colony will get stronger. But the only weakness to many of these rats is, as you can see, they all have 1 toughness, so it just takes 1 weak removal spell to blow them up, and we kind of have to start over again. However, there is the payoff if they do manage to stay on the field. Your first payoff will be Pack Rat. Pack Rat's power and toughness is equal to the number of rats you control. So obviously, if we can keep these little critters alive, Pack Rat will get better. Its second ability is where we really want to use. For 3 mana and to discard a card, you get to create a token that's a copy of Pack Rat. So you can just basically keep making tokens of these so long as you got something to throw away into the graveyard. And of course, your last major payoff is Piper of the Swarm, a 2 mana 1/3 human warlock. Rats you control have menace. You can tap it for 2 mana and to create a black rat creature token, or for 4 mana and tapping it, you can sacrifice 3 rats and then gain control of target creature. You rarely are ever going to have to use that third ability, but it does come in helpful in moments where maybe throwing away some of your weak rats is much more of a valuable thing to do to gain control of something else that they have that you just can't block. More often than not, though, you're going to be using the second ability to create more rat creature tokens. And of course, that first ability means that you can push through damage with even your weakest rats much more easier. But that is basically it for your creature package. Now let's go over the non-creature spells. For your non-creature spells, these are going to be what we'll be using to get mostly our opponent's creatures out of the way and to help us support the weak rats that we do use. First off, however, we're going to talk about Thoughtseize. I can't stress enough that you need this card. This card in the deck allows us to have a turn 1 play to get a peek at what our opponent is doing and just plan accordingly. As for your removal, 4 copies of Fatal Push and 2 copies of Bloodchief's Thirst. The reason why we're using this setup is mainly because if you haven't seen it already, there's a lot of elves going around in the format, and a lot of those pointy-eared little creatures are really getting annoying. So that's why you want to use Fatal Push for now, and Bloodchief's Thirst as only 2 copies of. Make sure to adjust, of course, based on how the meta changes, and of course, when we go over to the sideboard, we'll explain your other options. Bastion of Remembrance is basically just here because your creatures are pretty weak, so we do need a way to keep our life total high enough so in case we have to chump block, we can survive maybe in a couple extra turns. But its other bonus is in Phyrexian Arena. We need this, of course, to help us keep our card draw going, but as you see, with every time we draw that extra card, we lose life. So therefore, Bastion of Remembrance helps us out there. Also, this card oddly synergizes with Piper the Swarm, so that's why we have a couple copies of it. But otherwise, nothing special here. Mostly just removal, some hand disruption, and some card draw and life gain. All right, let's go over the land base. Now, remember how I mentioned that our rats are a little on the weak side? Well, we technically have 2 more rats. Honestly, I wanted to make it 4 rats, but I'm out of wild cards, so that's okay. Anyways, since we're mono-colored, this is actually going to be a little bit easier on us in terms of budget. 4 copies of Castle Lockwain to help us draw cards, and again, this does make us pay life, so that's why we do have the Bastion of Remembrance. But Bog is going to be your graveyard hate. 14 snow-covered swamps, and this is why, because we will have Faceless Haven. If you can get 4 copies of Faceless Haven, definitely do it. The only reason I have 2 in this version is, again, I just don't have enough wildcards to grab them. But if I did, I would have 4 copies and then probably drop at least maybe 1 Castle Lockwain and maybe 1 snow-covered swamp. But you want to have as many as possible so you can then make this usable. The reason why you have Faceless Haven here is, as you know, it is all creature types. So it does count as a rat. And in the off chance that you still are getting your rats blown up by your opponent, since this comes in as a land, it's a lot harder for an opponent to remove it if we use it at the correct time. But there you go. That's going to be it for your land base. Let's go over now the sideboard. The sideboard is mostly just to mimic what we have already, but it also gives us a couple of other more niche options. 2 more copies of Bloodchief's Thirst, depending on what's going on with the meta, and also to handle a lot of the creatures that are running around in the format, such as elves. 3 more copies of Disruption in the form of Duress. 3 copies of Grafdigger's Cage, because we do have a lot of Collected Company decks running around. Feed the Swarm to destroy mostly enchantments, but it can get rid of a creature in a pinch. Just be mindful that it does cost you life, depending on what is the mana cost. Oh, I'm sorry, not converted mana cost, mana value. Guys, sorry, we gotta get used to that, everybody. I know. Mana value. Hashtag thanks Strixhaven. 2 copies of Grasp of Darkness just to deal with any of the indestructible creatures that are in the format. 2 copies of Heartless Act as your other catch-all removal, and a single copy of Liliana Dreadhorde General. This is really going to be something you don't sideboard in too often, but if games get long and grindy with your rats, this actually can help us get out some more card draw, and of course if we have to sacrifice just to get some other things out of the way, it has that pseudo-edict effect. But otherwise, that is it for your sideboard. As always, I tell you guys, make sure to adjust based on what the meta is going through. All right, you know what time it is. Let's go ahead. Let's take our rats to fight Sparky. All right, and here we go. We are going to be playing our mono black rats deck. Oh yeah, we are going all jank on this day. All right, so let's see how we're doing here. Okay, so remember again, rats, you ideally want something in the first turn, but we got a lot of 2-drops. This is not bad. I mean, it's fine. You'll be able to get your rats pretty big pretty quick. Let's keep it. See what happens. Let's see what happens. Snow-covered swamp down. All right, playing red. All right, Sparky. Fair enough. Let's see what we got. Castle Lockwain will allow us to help us draw what we need. Let's just start going aggro right now and see what Sparky does. If they have any removal, they got removal. They do. Yeah, that's what you would expect for a normal opponent, I would say. All right. It's okay. We got plenty of rats to go around. If we can get down the Piper of the Swarm, we'll actually be in a good spot because we can just keep churning out more rats. Goblin Gathering. All right. All right. Well, we got plenty of Castle Lockwains, which is fine. So now we can put down Piper of the Swarm. Let's put down our second rat colony. Might get blown up, but that's okay. Wait it out. Remember, again, you don't need to immediately start attacking. If the board's empty, though, then don't, by all means, start going aggro. You might not have another chance. Raid Bombardment. Okay. No attacks? All right. Okay, Fatal Push is actually nice here. So let's do that. Fatal Push away 1 Gobbo. We'll put that on our last rat. No fear, Sparky. No fear. Remember that now that you have Piper the Swarm out, your rats now have Menace, which means a single goblin can't block, which is great for us. Now we can start forcing through damage. There we go. This will be pretty quick. We have mana open, but that means we can now start generating more rats with Piper the Swarm. All right, Sparky, this is your shot. All right. Put down creatures. It's the only way they're going to win this. They're not going to win this. All right. Making more rats. Anybody guys ever seen Ratatouille? Good movie, by the way. I really do like that movie, actually. All right, so what do we do here? So we got a couple options. You can sacrifice a couple rats if you need to get rid of something, move it out of the way, and push through damage. But let's draw a card, actually. I want to see what we get. Bastion's actually not too bad. Remember, again, our Bastion is here so that way we can be a little bit more abusive with our card draw. And then it also triggers off if we start sacrificing rats to the Piper of the Swarm. But we don't. So we'll just make another rat. And we'll pass. We can afford to wait it out a little bit longer since Sparky is not really going to have much of an option coming up. So what our next move is... Okay. That weakens our rat a little bit, which is annoying, but that's fine. It's not the end of the world. The only downside, of course, to your rat plan is remember that all of them only have 1 toughness. So a lot of stuff is just gonna die really easily. But again, not a big deal. Once we have Bastion of Remembrance down, it's pretty much over. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's close this out. I know, not super exciting, but it does work. We're going to attack with all of this. And you know what? We're going to steal... Wait, do we have the mana for it? No, we don't. That's fine. Make another rat. And that's it. Passing the turn. Okay, Sparky. They're probably going to go attacking, which is fine. We'll just block. This time we'll actually block. Ouch. Pinging us. Not that it matters. Come on. Oh my goodness. They had a combo trick. Not that it still didn't matter. Okay. They go down to 3. They go down to 2. And you know what? Let's just do it this way. We'll do the rat sacrifice. Sacrifice 3 rats. Target a creature. We'll steal that. Not that it matters. But there you go, guys. That's rats. Rats off to you. I knew I was going to say that. And there you go. Nothing too glamorous. Janky as heck. But it's still pretty fun. All right. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about other options for the deck. Now, as far as alternative ways you can play this deck. So normally, of course, this is when I go over the upgrades. But as you kind of saw, the reason why I didn't want Rats to be budget is Rats needs all the help it can get to actually be decent and at least somewhat competitive against other decks. But if you say you really want to play Rats, but you don't want to spend any wildcards, or at least you want to minimize it, here's my budget version for you. I don't recommend this, honestly, but if you really want to try Rats and you don't want to spend that much, this is your alternative. So instead of Phyrexian Arenas, I've replaced those with Call of the Death Dwellers. It's not card draw advantage, but the advantage is if you get your rats blown up, you can bring them back at least, and this would help you get out a little bit more value out of your creatures. Say like you trump block with maybe that Typhoid Rat, and you lose the Rat Colony. Call of the Death Dweller will bring those back, and you can put some counters on them to give them pseudo evasion and pseudo removal in the terms of adding maybe Death Touch to one of the other rats. Otherwise, other cards that you want to replace, Thoughtseize is really harsh to lose, but you can put in Duress. It's not the end of the world, but also expect that you're not going to be as consistent as before. You can drop down your Snows and make them regular swamps. Drop the Faceless Haven, just add in more swamps. Minimum, I would recommend at least 1 Castle Lockwayne. As far as your sideboard, that just means that now you'll get rid of your Grafdigger's Cage, make them Soul Guide Lanterns. You'll just add in a lot more space for removal. Keep the Liliana at the very least. But in this version, if we count it up, 1 Mythic, 1 Rare. You have Piper the Swarm, which is another 4 Rare, so that's 5. And that's 9. So there you go. In this version you see right here, we managed to get ourselves back to our budget, which is usually around 10 combination of rares and mythics. So in this version, we have 9 rares and 1 mythic. So there's your budget version. I really have to insist, though, if you really want to play Rats, you are going to have to spend wildcards on getting copies of Pack Rat and Piper the Swarm. Without these, don't bother playing Rats. You could try to be janky as possible with just Rat Colony, but you're not going to be happy with it. At the very minimum, this is what makes the deck a thing. Pack Rat and Piper the Swarm. That's not negotiable. But aside from that, that's your budget option for you guys. And there you have it. There you go, everyone. We have made rats. Now, to kind of look at a reflection of this, rats isn't too janky. I mean, they're not that bad, are they? I mean, they just need a little extra support, a little bit maybe more than the usual tribe, like, oh, I don't know, elves. In any case, you tell me, what do you think? Do you like seeing me do more janky options like this, where it's going to be rats or, oh, I don't know, Doge in the future? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys. Aside from that, thanks again for watching, guys. Be sure to like and subscribe if I helped you out, you learned something, or at least entertained you. And remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later.